So, hey everyone, happy Friday officially. We're going to roll the intro in just a couple minutes here, but good to have my good friend Starkerz on. How's it going, man?
Yo, all good. Hope you're doing well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been, um, I have had the great pleasure of having many dozens of guests on this show over the years. And this is, I think I've been doing these live since somewhere around the end of 2020 or so, or mid 2020. So it's been pretty much like my weekly ritual. Um, but
Oh, wow.
it's been a great it's been great to have. The good thing about going to Hive Fest is, I mean, there's a lot of good things, but the good thing about going there is I have a lot of new people who are friends and look good on camera who can jump on shows. And it's just like now I get to, rather than abuse the same few people in the rotation, say, hey, can you help me out? And they're just like, I'd rather be getting drunk right now, but fine. Like, rather than that, I get to have some extra, new people to throw into this thing.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's been really cool to see you talk to a few of the Hivians live, and
Mm-hmm.
I think on Hive, probably as a result of the fork away from the legacy chain, a lot of the blockchain community assumed it was dead and gone, and just kind of
Mm-hmm.
wasn't anything of significance anymore. However, a lot of the hardcore stayed on, and we've been building and building and building and building for 4 years. And then when we finally get to come across paths with people like yourself, which is very rare for Hive because we just seem to be quite isolated, although we're not trying to be, just kind of the
Mm-hmm.
way the cookie crumbled after the hard fork. Um, but when we do come across people like you, and it's like finally we can speak to someone on an open forum online who has you have very similar views to what decentralization is to us. We want to do decentralization properly. We've been doing it properly since we forked away from the legacy chain of Steam,
Mm-hmm.
and we just believe in various mechanisms and methods for making sure that we retain decentralization properly and not
Yeah.
corrupt it with all of these different corrupted elements that have snuck into the industry over the years. And we've just been watching painfully as people have sold their souls away, and a lot of the industry have lost track of what decentralization is, and they've chased the money basically.
Yeah.
And so when we come across guys like you who haven't chased the money and have stuck to your set of principles and speak regularly on it, it's nice to see that there's still a few people in the industry left that actually understand what decentralization is and live it and
Yeah.
eat it, breathe and sleep it as well.
I mean, just call it for what it is when you talk to the poors like me, those who haven't gotten there is an interesting comment from do you know who Vlad Kostia is? He's like a Bitcoin podcaster, runs a Bitcoin
Okay.
takeover podcast. He's kind of been like a Bitcoin maximalist, but this year he interviewed Roger Ver, and since then it's just been like it's been he got it like canceled by the cancel mob, and then yeah, it's been a great awakening. He made a post recently where he basically said the same stuff that I said about Bitcoin in 2016, about
Right.
like, I don't like the direction it's going and things like that,
Yeah.
and basically said that like everyone who doesn't care about this must be just like obscenely rich. And that is a great insight because that happened here. So, like, um, in New Hampshire, where I live, there was a great Bitcoin revolution around 2012 to 2016, 17 or so, right? Especially 2018. During that time, and it was like the very first restaurants that like actual like real point like restaurants, like not just some dude at a farmer's market that accepted Bitcoin in like the whole world almost were there. And then you had like a lot of people just like running around actually spending it. There was a local peer-to-peer economy at the Porcupine Freedom Festival of 2014. I was there the entire week and didn't bring any fiat, and I got to spend Bitcoin on like 95% of things, and the only 5% I couldn't, they would take silver coins, and so I bought silver with Bitcoin at the local vendor and paid them there. It's so like this whole energy was very strong, but these
Yeah.
people are so early that, myself included, but these people were so early that when the block size wars and everything happened, a lot of people just kind of were quiet, and then they just had so
Yeah.
much money, and they just kind of went and bought a giant house and just disappeared over there. And that's kind of how it worked out.
I mean, I think that's part of it. If we can finally get the infrastructure in place and actually give it a try, right? And people like you were doing that back in 2014, which is just incredible. But once you get that bug, it's not just the Bitcoin bug. There's this second bug of being able to use it and actually being like, yeah, right. I actually sat down, I used this, I spent it, I got some goods for it. It was slick. It worked. There's no reason to use the banking system anymore. It's all here for us. It's ready to go. All we got to do is take it up and use it. And when you get that bug initially, and it's possible, right? And the base layers upon which you're operating are neutral, and they can't censor you. It's like there's light at the end of the tunnel. It's
Hmm.
like we've got a chance to go for some form of freedom in the future as opposed to CBDC slavery, and this is the technology that you can do it with. And when guys like you get to actually try it out years ago and know for sure that it works and it's real, it's I mean, I spend a lot of my time trying to help people understand how to use it, how to benefit from it,
Hmm.
spend it, and I think that's the way we adopt. That's the way we get mainstream adoption, by helping people understand how to use it and helping people understand that it's better than the current alternative.
Yeah, absolutely. And Agnew's right. My mic is low. Um, th- I think there's a lot of complacency where,
Mm.
um, okay, that should hopefully be better. Anyway, let me know what the volume is, guys. But um, there's a lot of complacency where people just, first, there's no alternative to the fiat system, and people were just, any energy, any and every energy that they could kind of like try to find alternative they were like thinking about. Then they had gift, this gift from above, from Satoshi, right, to fix this, and then they kind of just sort of like took it for granted and got it, just just kept on like letting it, just not doing anything about it. And I think that probably what's going to happen is something will have to change. Something bad will have to happen again that just reignites people. And so, like, last little point before we like officially roll the intro and such, I like I moved to New Hampshire 2013. Just never been here. Just didn't have a job lined up. Just put everything I had in my car and drove the 50-hour road trip across the U.S. from the Southwest all the way up here, and looking for wanting to join this thing called the Free State Project, an intentional community of people pursuing maximum freedom in their life. And like a lot of people, including people who believed the same things I did, thought I was crazy, or like, oh man, that's hardcore. Yeah, I'm doing my own thing over here though, or like, oh, what's it like? They're very like unconvinced, and every time I go visit them, they were the same thing. Oh well, yeah, okay. Oh, that was going over there with that stuff. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. And then after 2020, it was a whole entirely different thing. Everyone started hitting me up, be like, dude, do you have are there houses there I could buy? I gotta get there. Like now you see it. So I think that we
Right.
have this big complacency where people think, I have Bitcoin, it's going up, and I have it in my Trezor, but I buy it on custodial services, and I only use it as savings. I don't need to sell any to spend, and I'm just going to hold it out until we win. And at some point, when people start to be like, the tax authorities start to say, hey, we're going to do a 20% haircut for all crypto millionaires, and we know where your crypto is. We could see it on the blockchain. Pay up. And people start to freak out. That's when the next wave of principles comes. Maybe I'm pessimistic. What do you think?
Well, we take the pessimistic view on all of this because it's too important not to. We don't
Mm-hmm.
mean to be pessimistic, but you have to plan for the worst case scenario, and you have to treat it seriously, because this is important. We have a job to do here, and we've got a short window of time to do it in, and we have to plan for these worst case scenarios. And it means talking pessimistically quite regularly, but it doesn't mean that you're being pessimistic. I agree. It'll be some. I'd like to think that the way we roll this out is it's going to be a slow transition. We want it to be a slow transition to a parallel economy that's actually separate and segregated from the current economy that operates on its own, that can't be censored. The best case scenario for everyone is that it's a slow transition. So hopefully we can achieve that, and there's various different ways we can do that. But there are going to be like bumps in the road where different crises happen along the way, and people realize, like you've just said, oh, what you were doing before, that kind of helps me right now. And it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, I was telling you about this 5 years ago, but you thought it was crazy, and now you realize that we're not as crazy as we look. And that's going to happen over and over again over the next few years as well, I think, in various different scenarios.
Yes. Over a long enough time, crazy is just obvious, but years before it's obvious.
Normalize crazy. That's what we're going to do.
So that's what we're gonna call it. Crazy is pre-normal. We're not crazy. We're just
Pre-
pre-normal. We're going to be normal at some point, but just not yet.
yes,
All right.
yes.
Great time to roll the intro and get this thing officially going. All right. Ready? Go. So, hey everyone. Happy Friday officially. Welcome to the Digital Cash Rundown, episode 173. So, if this is 173, that means I've been doing it for at least 173 weeks in a row, many more than that because I've had to skip some for doing things like going to Hive Fest. But I'm joined by the one and only Starkerz. How's it going, man?
Yo, it's good, man. It's good. It's really a pleasure to be on. We've watched from the sidelines, and we've been running our own podcast. It's similarly to you, trying to run it once a week, and we're on like episode 120 or something, and it's about
Nice.
2 hours long each time. So we've come across you over the years and seen, oh yes, there's actually people that understand decentralization. They've got a set of principles that they stick to. It's very, very rare now in the industry, and it's nice to come across guys like you. So to actually be on your podcast, I feel a little bit starstruck, to be honest with you. But it's nice that we have
Stalker
these people
struck.
in the industry. Yeah, starstruck. Yeah, yeah. And it's nice to have you in the industry, and keep up the good work, man. Really, really, you're doing a lot more than you could ever imagine.
Yeah, well, thanks very much for that. And I have to just give a random shout out to this company called Zipto, like crypto with a Z, because I they do like it's like a super app. They do bill pay and stuff like that. I was on some space on X with like the CEO one time, and then we ended up chatting later, and then I was on their show. And I would say like for one of these like, you know, companies that interfaces with a lot of legacy financial services, they're exactly on the same wavelength as us, right? Which is gives me hope that it's not just all corporate VC money on this kind of stuff. That there's people who get that corporate VC money but want to do it in the pursuit of freedom money. So just a random thing I always like to give. I always love to discover like another like, oh, you too. Oh, cool. Out in the wild. But yeah, let's kick off the stuff. So first, whoops, let me go back here. I forgot to let me fix something real quick. But basically,
While
yeah.
you're fixing, I can talk about the Leo thread if you want.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Filibuster. I love when people filibuster.
So for those people that are listening that don't know, and there are many that listen that do know, there's a site called In Leo, and it has a special threads feature for short
Mm-hmm.
form content on the blockchain. And all this is all short form threads, limited text, quick form content that you can post on the chain. And Joel has set up a Leo thread for this specific podcast. So if you are listening, and especially if you're listening live, you can go to it. It'll be somewhere in the comments, and you can sign in and post your thoughts about what we're talking about. Ask any questions, and because several of us who are watching this and following this live have large stakes on Hive, we can vote your comments on the thread. So basically, you can get rewarded for listening live via blockchain technology, and your comments stay permanently encapsulated forever, censorship resistant on the blockchain. And we'll do our best to get to them during the show, and certainly we'll be upvoting and distributing crypto inflation to the best comments made live during the show. So Leo threads.
Yeah. Um. Okay. Yeah. I hold on. Let me fix the audio for a second. For some reason, it turned to a different microphone, so it should be the good one now. So
Ah,
apologies for everyone else. Just the
that's why
random
you have
things.
yours left.
Yeah, the random things. It's like, oh, you got a little faint volume. Yeah, it's because I'm not using the right microphone, even though I was, and it just decided to switch it for me. But these things happen. Yeah, so let's launch into the stuff. So first, of course, I have to give a shout out to my one and only sponsor, CoinATM Radar, who did approach me. Not and actually, as I tell every time, they said that they didn't expected to lose money, but they again liked what I was saying all over X, and they're on the same wavelength, so they decided to throw me a bag. So thank you for your contribution to losing money in the but for principles, for a cause. So this podcast is sponsored by CoinATM Radar. When buying crypto with cash, an ATM is much more reliable and safer than meeting some random person in a random place. And unlike an exchange which could freeze your account, you truly own all the crypto you buy. With CoinATM Radar, you can find crypto ATMs and other services where you can buy or sell cryptocurrencies for cash. On their website, you can search by coin, address, if the ATM supports selling as well as buying. You can also search by geo area like country, state, city, and compare actual and current fees with different ATMs. So find out more, go to coinatmradar.com or coinatmradar.com. And as I mentioned before, and a bunch of times, when I went to Hive Fest, I didn't know what the crypto picture was going to be like. So headed right to the Mall of Split, and there's a big old Bitcoin shaped ATM that I looked up, of course, on CoinATM Radar. Sold about 200 euros worth of Dash for paper, for euros. And that lasted me the whole time there. And it was great. And especially because Croatia's there's a lot of cash only businesses there and stuff. And I'm glad I did that, because otherwise I would have had to maybe struggle to do some things. So it is a very practical tool I use. So this first thing, I got to talk about Italy, unfortunately. Not unfortunate to talk about Italy, but in this case, it's unfortunate. So Italy to raise capital gains tax on Bitcoin and cryptocurrency from 26% to 42%. There's apparently a proposal going through. I don't think it's signed into law. It's not a sure thing, but they're going in that direction. And I don't know what your hot take on this is.
Don't sell your crypto.
Yeah. Total.
I mean, it's coming, right? It's coming, regardless of whether it's Italy or not. It's been something that's been on all of our minds for years, and we know that the system's going to try and capture us in some way, shape, or form, whichever way it can. And one of the ways is going to be by ridiculous tax levels. I mean, fortunately, some countries you can leave the tax system. Some countries you have to pay tax regardless of where you are.
Mm-hmm.
Some countries you can figure out ways to do it through businesses to lower your tax rate or whatever it is. There's always various different methods. Italy's it's a real shame. They've got some really smart people there. There's actually a couple of really good devs on Hive from Italy as well. The guys that built Peak D are Italian, two Italian guys.
Oh, interesting.
And I wonder, I'd be interested to hear what they have to say actually based on this. I'll have to ask them. But I mean, ultimately, I don't really know what to say, what you can do apart from get to a jurisdiction that allows you to live more free,
Yeah.
And there will always be one as far as that's what we're counting on. When the crunch happens and we start using our crypto and the rubber hits the road in certain jurisdictions, there's going to be jurisdictions that are pro and supportive of what we're doing, and benefit from what we do, and there's going to be other more let's say stuck in their ways type jurisdictions that won't be so open. And I guess the EU is kind of proving to be one of those at the moment.
Yeah.
I do think that the more clever the tech that we build, the more it can actually help them too. So they don't need to feel like this is us versus them. Like they have to tax this stuff so heavily. I think it can be a benefit to all parties, including the parties that we're trying to move away from. I think they can benefit from this technology greatly as well. And maybe that's the angle to kind of take here is like, yeah, there's actually some benefit for all of us here. We don't need to tax the hell out of each other. This jurisdiction over here is going to benefit without taxing everyone. this one's going to suffer because people are going to leave. They're going to lose brain power. I mean, there's a lot of smart people in Italy, and I have no doubt that this will push many people away, particularly the crypto enthusiasts.
Yeah. So I wrote a post on this where I give some predictions about what people would do. Like first, some people might try to hide their Bitcoin, and not try to pay tax. And then I think this time around is when people start to realize that everything isn't as private as they thought, and then they might still get busted. Yeah. And at the end of the day, of course, people would like move out. But there was a funny comment that someone dropped over here. Let me highlight that. He commented. He says, "It's Italy. Nobody was paying taxes in the first place." So
that's very interesting.
It's funny because an Italian friend of mine who was in the Dash community, I ran into him at a conference in Zurich a few years ago, and he was actually talking about how in Italy, when like there's a very strong like clandestine economy, and like if you have someone who's going to like work on your house and do some like construction work, they want cash, and if you try to pay them with a card, they'll get angry and you start screaming at you, and they'll leave. Like they don't want to do it because then they have to report it, you know, and they just don't want to report it.
Yeah.
And so this is just what people have told me. It's kind of funny because then of course other friends, I have a bunch of other friends in Denmark, and you know, the Danish attitude is very different on that. They're just very like, we trust our institutions, we follow the law. And, you know, they're just very, you know, it's a great country too, but just a very different attitude on that. So, and they're already paying 42% capital gains on crypto, so they're like, we're already doing that.
We all love it, don't we? We love paying our tax to these governments, especially the way they're spending the money at the moment. Mm-hmm. One thing that I want to mention though on this whole tax issue, is a system or a kind of general ideology behind how this money can be spent and kept spent in an open, transparent, or transparent enough way that all parties can be satisfied. I've always liked this idea of having a large multi-sig where probably stable coins flow in, and they flow in from pseudo-anonymous accounts, so you don't know who's putting the money in. But you can see this money flowing into these accounts, into this one account. So it's a big pot of money, and no one ever puts more than a couple of $100 in at a time. And there's an algorithm built that allows you to spend money in shops. And the only way out of that multi-sig is via shops or via businesses that are registered with the government. So the government then, so what it means is if it's a massive multi-sig like that, you can have some form of privacy in your spending, so the government can't track who's spending what, but they can see what's being spent where, and they can see which businesses are suddenly making more money for no apparent reason, and go and investigate them for money laundering with the same mechanisms that they used to use pre-crypto. So this type of system would cater for people who want privacy, and it would also cater for governments who want to control money laundering. Because they can see the outflows into the businesses, and it's like someone needs to start proposing simple ideas like this in the conversation, so that when government starts saying we have to KYC your ass and your farts and everything else, right? We can turn around and say, well, no, there's simple models that we can use here to actually satisfy your needs, and by implementing such an idea, and I'm sure there's many other types of ideas. If you don't accept it, you're kind of very clearly overbearing your responsibilities here, and you're pushing a little bit further than you should do, based on the old idea that there's nothing else that you can do but KYC every single thing that we do. Well, no, there's actually various different mechanisms that we can implement with blockchain that allow you to, as a government, to anti-money launder, and also to provide privacy to your citizens at the same time, and so that everyone wins. And I just wish that these ideas would enter the mainstream discourse at some point.
Yeah, I do too. The thing is, the reason why we have these things where we have to complain about taxes and stuff is because when you're in a voluntary economy, when you have to persuade other people to do business with you, to do whatever else, you have a very different attitude towards your customers and relationships. Whereas if you could just write a law and force people, otherwise they go to jail, you start doing shenanigans. And so when you have this whole like money laundering thing, this whole concept, for the most part, and we're about to get actually to that point in a second, you end up having these laws that are written under pretexts, but really what they want is control over out of it. And so even if you give a very reasonable proposal of this is how we keep criminals from taking money and getting rid of it and stuff like that, if it doesn't give them the control they want, they'll find some way to like kind of say no. And so, but at the end of the day, there in every society, I'm sure, and maybe not Danish society, for example, yet, but in almost every society, there's a certain compliance percentage with laws, and at some point, you have a tipping point where people won't comply with anything, or they like rise up. And there's always this kind of like equation where every government pushes it as much as they can, and every citizen complies with things that they don't want to comply with, but it's just that they want to live their lives, and just the effort of saying like, oh, I'm going to go rise up and cause trouble is just not worth it. And it's been kind of evident in especially this U.S. election cycle, where a lot of people who are voting on Team Red this time were faithful Team Blue voters for like years and years and years and years. And finally, there was this tipping point where they're just like, you know what? I got to do something. I wish I was just prepared to pay more in taxes a little bit every year and just like get on with my life. But now I got to do something. So I definitely think that for like the capital gains tax thing, like they can extract as much as they can until people start just leaving the country, or even before that, people start finding clever ways to, hide what they've got, or then all of a sudden people who would like to sell their crypto in order to go on a vacation or buy a new house or something nice like that, just don't. They end up doing other things like, taking out loans with the crypto as a collateral so they don't trigger a taxable event or whatever. And then there's like industries that crop up around these things. And it kind of reminds me about how in the U.S. Southwest, where there's a significant illegal immigration group, there's a lot of people that just live there that don't have documentation, and therefore, but they still drive cars and things like that, and they don't, even though they don't have a license. And if they get caught, then the car gets impounded, and you need someone with a valid license to get the car out. And so there's these payday loan companies that are in the Southwest that you could take a payday loan out on your car. Now the payday loan company has a lien on your car, as a title to it, kind of. And now they have legal right to go rescue the car from impound, and then they give it over to the original person. So there's a business cropped up around getting around this legal impediment there. And I'm sure there will be businesses that come around legal impediments to, keeping your own damn money,
Yeah, Taskmaster just said in the Leo thread chat, similar to you, just go take your crypto, don't spend it, get a collateralized loan. It's a non-taxable event, and then you can either DeFi it or use it to build a business, or spend it all. Hopefully you don't do that.
Yeah, or hopefully you just do it as long as you don't have any fiat, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
This to me is coming though, and this idea of having to pay taxes. I also think that pseudo-anonymous but transparent transaction mechanisms in blockchains that are paying legitimate businesses that governments already know exist. Those types of mechanisms can be done far better with crypto and blockchain technology than in the current banking system and with cash even. And so I feel like there's going to be some solutions there where you're going to have more transparent tax systems. You're going to have more arguments not to pay tax because you're just doing petty spending. You're doing small scale spending. And I think there's going to be a lot of that argument come back into the fray as well as this technology rolls out. Why are we being taxed on everything? It's going to be very clear where the taxes go. Whereas in the current financial system, because you can't see where the money ends up, if we can get some governments starting to use this technology transparently, which I think that, you can argue for the individual having privacy, but the governments and their spending mechanisms should be more, especially their budget should be more on a transparent basis. And so then the people can hold them to account. And then it's like, you're going to get more questions coming up like, well, my tax clearly went here to here to here and it went out that way. And I didn't want it to be spent that way. I'm voting you out. Or I got taxed on this thing, and really I'm paying tax 5 or 6 times on this transaction because of it's always money that's taxed on money that's taxed on money that's taxed. And that will become more clear and transparent as people start to understand the technology. So I think these debates are going to come back up again, and I think it's going to ultimately end up with a more fair tax system over time as well.
Yeah, that's what I like about the about crypto, about radical sovereignty, is it gives the choice to opt out, right? Because otherwise, you don't have a practical choice to opt out. You will pay, and that's it. But then, if you have like super encrypted, whatever the hell coins, you can run a side business and just have that, and just keep that in a local economy. And if that happens at scale, there's just a massive amount of capital that's kept away from the system. And so at some point, the system has to adjust and provide a framework where people aren't going to go through all this like hiding stuff trouble, because they'll just rather pay. But if it's too unreasonable, then they won't. And so just like that's the thing, is like, even though a lot of people might be hardcore liberty folks that don't think that taxation is moral at all and things like that, even amongst those people, most people, almost the entire planet, would be more than happy to pay taxes if it's just not egregious, if it's easy to do, and they feel like they get some value out of it, like their public service servants actually work for them. And the problem is none of those things are true right now. So we kind of need a reset on that for sure.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, one of the things that's really cool here, and this is a fundamental misunderstanding at the moment because of how crypto is all about trading and pumping and dumping and making money and making trades. It's such a low-brow area of the industry. There's so much more to it. And I think, the idea of people coming to the realization that these blockchains are supposed to be neutral layers that have no compromise behind them, or as minimum compromise as possible. What does that do? It gives you digital rights, right? If you have a neutral blockchain, you have the right to transact on it equally with everyone else, right? And so this is a key realization, because once people realize that that's what these blockchains are, if they're done properly, without ICOs and pre-mines and CEOs backing the companies that run these blockchains, and centralized infrastructure and really expensive infrastructure, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a few different criteria that we like to meet. And once people learn that and can investigate blockchains for themselves and realize this blockchain's a bit more centralized than I really want it to be, maybe if it's for a game, okay, who cares so much? But if it's for your finances and your transactions and where you pay your taxes, you want that to be done on a neutral layer. Why? Because it ultimately means that the decision to transact rests with you as the user, right? Governments are trying to sell these ideas of CBDCs, and a lot of people think they might fail, they might do well, who knows? They're definitely going to try. And it seems to me that they're building them on layer 2 systems on top of that infrastructure, that it's all permissioned. And they're going to be able to take their ideal scenario is, we saw you crossing the street on a jaywalk, so we're going to take the money out of your account right here, right now, just like they're doing in China right now, right? That's not a neutral layer that your finances are being transacted on. That is a controlled, centralized, permissioned layer that they can control and dictate to you what happens and take taxes out of your account, whether they feel like it binds your property, right? You're not free. And people need to realize this distinction. The distinction is, if the blockchain technology that you're using is, and you've managed to get your government onto a neutral blockchain technology layer that they then implement their tax system on, now the right to transact and the ultimate final decision to transact rests with the user, you, the citizen, not being forced to transact by your government based on having to pay a fine. You will pay the fine if you choose to pay the fine. You will pay the tax if you choose to pay the tax. Okay, there may be some law there, but ultimately it's not auto-extracted from your account, right? And that's a key distinction. It's sovereignty, it's rights, it's digital rights.
Yeah, I actually had a discussion about this today because, or I made a post about it because the alleged current president of the U.S. made a statement that they're doing this legislation, or they're doing a rule to crack down on subscription services that make it should be as easy to unsubscribe as it is to subscribe, and it's just so hard to do that. And that reminds me of a time, the ancient times of 2016 and before, back when I had a bank account. And especially when I was of modest financial means, I had a great deal of anxiety around checking my bank balance because I just didn't know what I was going to find. Like, it could be this, it could be that. Ever since I've gone to crypto, I've never had that problem. I've always know exactly how much money, because people can't take it out. I have to give it to them. And so this entire thing of, oh, we gotta like put extra nonsense regulation on companies because it's too hard to subscribe. It's because the money's broken. If I was using crypto and then they're like, if I want to unsubscribe, it's too hard, I just don't pay them. And that's it. I just don't pay them. I've unsubscribed. You're not getting my money anymore.
So good. It's on Hive we do have a repeat payment mechanism, so you can click to pay a repeat transaction once a week or once a month or once a day, whatever you want it to be. But it's you that has that ability. You have to set it. There is no other company out there that sets that for you, and they write a little disclaimer saying, by the way, you have to unsubscribe for this because we're going to charge you next week through the nose. What are we doing? When did we get to a point where we're such a moldable group of people, especially in the West, that we will accept such impositions upon our banking systems without even asking a question? It's an accepted part of life. Whereas with crypto, it just isn't even in the question.
Yeah. Well, let's switch over to this laundering story, because we're kind of like flirting with it this whole time here. So TD Bank, which as far as I know is a more local bank to like my region of the world, faces $3 billion in penalties.
$3 billion.
And a U.S. asset cap related to the expected settlement charges that it failed to properly monitor money laundering by drug cartels. So all this talk about, cryptos for drug money, all this stuff, it's laundering. No, they're using these banks. And when the banks get caught doing this kind of stuff, they get $3 billion is kind of a lot of money, but it's also a slap on the wrist. Because as far as I'm aware, I saw someone randomly quote, again, I haven't fact checked this, so I'm not going to stand by it, but someone randomly quote that they made like 10 billion on the customers that ended up laundering all this money through them. Yeah. And so if they make 10 billion and it's just like they're just paying their operational cost to the government. But it's like, isn't that a little wild just how little
completely immoral. It's completely immoral. You can't have a balanced level, growing, sophisticated, civilized culture with such behavior being basically rewarded with a slap on the wrist and a fine. That's just the cost of doing business. I mean, you're in crony. That's one of the main results of hardcore cronyism, which is, people say we live in a capitalist system or we live in a socialist system, or no, we live in a cronyist system. It's cronyism to the max at this point.
Yeah, and what's insane is how harshly crypto has been treated. And so I posted a take on this on X, but also a short article on Hive, which obviously some people in the audience will go right there instead. But basically talking about this, and it turns out that four people who've been on this very podcast, this very channel, have been to prison or are in prison currently. Right. 3 out of the 4 were for money laundering related things. Obviously, so it was Ian Freeman, who's currently not free. Ian not free, man, unfortunately. And Risen, both were peer-to-peer traders of crypto for cash, thought they were legal, and then oops, you money laundered, you go to prison, unlike TD Bank, which doesn't go to prison. And also had the Samurai Wallet folks on the show, and they just provided a privacy service for Bitcoin. And then, you laundered Russian money or something, even though it was like a permissionless system that's non-custodial. And then, they're currently going through the court process, and I would expect, unfortunately, them to see jail time for this. And so they just get cracked down on really hard Well, then you have these banksters that just, oh, can you give us a little bit of your laundering profits just so we save face in case this gets public? It's night and day the different treatment.
Yeah, yeah. It's one's a company that's got human rights, and one's a human that's got no rights at all.
Yeah.
Right. That's kind of what they ended up doing with it. I mean, the other thing that I see as well is an area that worries me a little bit, and it doesn't worry me. I mean, I'm just going to keep doing what we do, and we've got to do it. But it's this whole idea of devs being punished for creating code that helped to launder money, for example.
Mm-hmm.
And we see several cases of this, and I feel like they're coming down hard initially to discourage people. But
Mm-hmm.
I think the answer to that is we should just all be building this stuff, all of us, and then there'll be too many people to. You just look like a crazy dictator at that point, you know.
Yeah.
And you know, I do. There's a way to do it, right? There's a way to do it that's more thoughtful maybe than other people have done it in the past, where you know you make sure it's all open source, you make sure you're not the central person, you make sure you have other coders all over the world working on it, and it's not really even you writing the code. You make sure that there is a way, you know, you don't want to be on US soil laundering like money that's paying for Iranian missiles that's going to go and bomb US allies, right? You just don't want to get yourself into that situation. So you want to get yourself into a situation where that process, if that does happen, it's got nothing to do with you, right? You
Mm-hmm.
just released a tool, and then you have to go down the argument of this is a tool. Tools can be used for good and for bad, right? People can create 3D printed guns, and
Yeah.
people use them for good, from what I can tell, for protection. And it's like it's a tool. It's just how you wield that tool, and that's the debate we've got to bring here to stop this type of behavior from happening. And it's clear that there's a precedent already that the banking system's worried, and so they fine each other and give each other little slaps on the wrist. Yet the
Mm-hmm.
people that do money laundering type stuff in crypto, because it's not controllable,
Mm-hmm.
well, I think the government's coming to realize that most of it is controllable, but the systems that aren't controllable, the systems that people like you and I work on, because I by default will always work on systems that are regulated and owned by the community itself, not by some VC capital firm. And I think you're of the same view.
Mm-hmm.
There's gonna be a point in time in the next 5 years where we do something that pisses someone royally off, because the technology that we're building by definition is that, you know. And the debate needs to become, how are we helping these people? Are we helping them? Are they able to take part? Do they feel included? You know, and are we able to make them regain legitimacy in their communities and things like this with this technology? You know, benefit them in some way so that they don't see it as a threat to their dynasty, as it were, and it's some kind of compromise benefit to them can come. Maybe it's not as good as it was, but it's not as bad as they felt like. And then we can start talking and discussing together and saying, look, this is going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
You can arrest all of us if you want, but it's still going to happen.
Yeah. It might
You know,
just be a way of like making the costs to block it more than they could bear. And like right now, they've already overextended themselves in a lot of ways by criminalizing open source development of
yeah,
code. Now, in the US, it's been much more nuanced because there's some big arguments you can make from Tornado Cash and from Samurai Wallet, etc., that even though they developed and deployed open source code, they had VC funded companies behind this and they themselves profited from it. And they also that they had a knowledge of illegal activity happening on this. And so they kind of like discarded the open source code development part of the argument and just focused on the rest. What's worrying though is with the Pertsev case in for Tornado Cash in the Netherlands, the judge actively went after him for building the code and saying like you should have known better than to build something that could be used for this. And that's where things start to get really bad, is where you start to criminalize people for open source code development. And when I'm sure the code is speech kind of arguments have to come out and a lot of litigation has to happen. And also, I think that a lot of open source devs are just going to have to be anonymous and just have completely anon profiles and get paid in completely non-cryptocurrency that isn't really, that even if they wanted to pay taxes on, they'd have to dox themselves in order to do that. And for their safety, they're not going to do that. And then that's the unintended consequence
Consequence.
of trying to crack down on it. And at that point, they might have to say, all right, code is speech, you can code, but if you run front ends or whatever facilitating this activity, we'll crack down on those people. But the devs are left alone, and then the devs will come back and start paying taxes on their fat salaries, you know?
Yeah, completely agree. And that, that's where it comes back to the point what I was saying earlier, where it's going to happen, right? This people are going to build this code. I mean, whether you were pro it or not is kind of irrelevant. The way I saw it was they tried to lock me in my house. They tried to lock me in my freaking house, right? And it's like, you shouldn't have done that, and the types of people that you did it to, it wasn't the right people to do it to. I don't think they quite realized the can of worms that they opened, because it's just given everyone, thousands and thousands of people all over the world, the drive to be like, no, we're building this now, and this is happening, and we're going to do it. There's going to be anonymous devs working on it, left, right, and center in all sorts of different countries. I've been working in development work in this industry for 7 years now, 6 years, and the amount of devs that I just don't know who they are. I don't know, and I don't want to know. I know them by their Hive username. They're anonymous on Hive. I know the good devs, and we work with them, and it's fine. There's no need for a contract or anything. There's rep, and this is the other thing. On blockchains that are genuinely open and legitimately decentralized, you get reputation. So you build reputation. It can either be an assigned number, or you just build it for yourself over time based on your behavior. And people know who you are. Whether you're anonymous or not is irrelevant. And so you get these reputable people working on the chain that no one knows who they are.
Yeah.
And that's just it's so cool and new and nuanced in this world that wasn't there in the old world. And it definitely means that this stuff's going to happen over time.
Yeah.
But I still think that people like you and I need to figure out smart ways to have the discussion. We can't just say it's going to happen. There's anonymous devs, kind of deal with it. It's got to be, how do we mitigate the damage here, and how do we make it in such a way that everyone finds a win? Like, for example, what I mentioned earlier with paying money into a pool, and then that pool does the spending on everyone's behalf to legitimate businesses. It's like, you don't need to put $40,000 anonymously through that, right? You can just limit it to $200, and the government doesn't need to worry that you're like buying international arms shipments, right? So you can find a win there, right? And it's like, there's those types of things we've got to look to the governments and explain to them, well, like, there are limitations that can be placed in these scenarios, and then we can highlight things. It's when you start like looking like you're covering shit up, that and shit that's against stuff that the government sees as against its own interests, right? It's like, we can be smart. We can be smart here, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And as far as like the devs thing, one thing I've noticed is when you have a truly global economy, and especially you have developers who could be anywhere in the world and contribute, especially anonymous ones, you start to find it biases towards certain geographies. And like, for example, I've noticed in a lot of crypto, definitely in the Dash world, there's a lot of Russians. And I think that a lot of that has to do with like sanctions and things like that just make work really hard to get international work. And then it's like, okay, well, crypto, it's some anon, whatever. And then no one really cares as long as your work's well done. And then there's just, it opens up to those kinds of groups and people. And it's, for me, like, I'm a very big fan of like privacy and sovereignty and stuff. But at the same time, I also, on a personal level, like to find out things about people, like find out who's who. And it's like a nice fact when I found like, oh, this killer is from wherever. And I remember one of the early, back in 2017, 18, one of the contributors to the Dash code base who kept on finding bugs and then like exploits in the or weaknesses maybe in like the privacy function thing. It ended up being some 16-year-old kid who just was really talented at this stuff. And he just was like, kept on finding these things. And now he he is the lead core developer of Dash. He's like he's the lead developer of like the main core blockchain part of it, because he got a job like when he was 16, 17, 18, and now he just like, there you go, he's this young kid who just was talented and finding stuff out and just right there. And there's another there was some hardware wallet company, I think BitFi was the name, and they had like, it was like a Wi-Fi or Bluetooth based hardware wallet, and some 15-year-old kid hacked it and made the CEO lose his mind so much that he was creating sock puppets to attack this kid and everything. And then the kid would just upload videos of him putting like Doom and Quake on the hardware wallet and playing it, and just like, look, I got into your device and wrecked it. And it was quite entertaining. But yeah, the point is like, the identity of is this some kind of weird old man from Serbia or something who's this super good coder and just a strange person? Is it some literal child from like next door who's just bored? Like, who is it? And it is kind of interesting. I will kind of give a shout out to the Maya Protocol folks. I have my Maya shirt on today, and they're also extremely aligned with all our values. And what I like about them is they're technically an anonymous team in terms of they don't go by their real names. I know there's no company behind the protocol. They don't have bank accounts, at least not for work, and they are like truly in that way. Yet they're some of the most, I would say, energetic and professional and hardworking people I know in the space. And you know, again, a great deal of pseudonymous reputation behind all these people who have no idea what their real names are, or in most cases, what their faces are. And then I went to the Rare Evo conference in Vegas and met the whole team in person, basically, connected all the faces to the identities, and was definitely impressed by their professionalism and just like how well they acted a lot more legit than most of the, you know, on paper KYC kind of teams around there. And so it is kind of interesting how that shakes out.
You know, there's a funny story, well, similar story that's got a lot of parallels to what you said in our side of things. You're familiar with Fulltech, right?
Yes, I actually had a call with them recently.
Okay, cool. He's we rate him very, very highly. He originally started through video infrastructure and eventually came through to ThreeSpeak. So he was working on ThreeSpeak. He is really the lead dev on ThreeSpeak as well as VSC. It's just ThreeSpeak's taking a back seat because VSC is more important at the moment. And so we started working with him probably 6 years ago or so. And it was at Las Vegas. I was doing an event. I forget what it was called now. It was a couple of years ago. And this like young kid kind of walks up to me and he goes, "Hey, I'm Voltec." And I was like, "What?" I thought he was a 40-year-old man because he's so smart. Like we worked with him for 5 years or 6 years before that. And the way he speaks on the calls is so smart. You just think, because like smarts is one thing, but I prefer experience over smarts. I like experience because they've normally done the job before. They know it well. So I always thought that Voltec was quite experienced, having worked with him and talked to him. And I thought he was about 40. But he's just so smart. He's that smart that like he considers things on the fly very well, and it sounds like he's got experience. So he fooled me in that sense. Not that he was trying to fool me, but it turns up and he's like this young kid, and he's like, I'm like, "How old are you?" And he's like, "I'm 21." And then I like count back, and I realized that I've been working with him for 6 years, and so we started employing him when he was 15, not knowing who he was, or So it's this 15-year-old. Las Vegas connection, anonymous people that you put faces to. It just reminded me of the story.
There's as I mentioned before, I'm pretty sure I've never bought crypto as in exchanged fiat for crypto. I've only ever exchanged goods or services for crypto. And so when I was doing Bitcoin, and then at the mid-end 2016, I started to like move over to Dash when the block started to fill up and all that stuff. And I remember the first Dash I ever got paid in was I wrote some article for a news site, and they paid me 3 Dash for it, which was at $7 per Dash at the time. But the site, it was some news site run by someone, and I later found out it was someone who's from Ghana. And I was like, "Oh, this is cool." I'm like working for this guy. and he got the whole news site together, got like sponsorship money and ad money and stuff to like run it, and was managing a small team. And it turns out that this was also, he was like somewhere either 16 or 18 years old, some young kid from Ghana who just like, I can run a news site, and then and here I am. I mean, I don't know, remember how old I was at the time, like probably around almost 30 at the time, and I had just switched and gone full crypto, abandoned my previous career, and I'm just like writing, and here I'm
Oh,
working for this literal child from a country way less rich than mine, but like that's kind of what makes it awesome, you know? It's like,
yeah, well, Ghanaians are very ingenuitive.
yes,
I mean, you're familiar with McSam's story. He's a Ghanaian
yeah,
member of the Hive community that figured out, hold on a minute, I can put a pitch in for and work out the cost of a water well, put a pitch into the DAO of Hive and see if I get the go. And he got the money, and then he built the water well, like tracked the whole process transparently on the Hive blockchain with his
hmm,
content. And yeah, there's now like 24, I think, water wells in Ghana that are all funded
hmm,
by Hive because of him taking the initiative. Like no one asked him to do it. He's just a Ghanaian guy. So we've got to watch out for these Ghanaians. They're smart.
yeah, and it just in general with crypto, you could do what you want, just do it,
Yeah,
and I
yeah,
think
just do it.
that's an interesting thing. A lot of the early internet, before people figured out what you'd call guardrails or whatever, had that same energy where YouTube
Mm.
stars just came out of nowhere because they made very bizarre, almost Kafka-esque like short skits or whatever that you're like, what the hell is this? But apparently everyone likes it, and then they go mega viral off of this, and then they, just all the early days of people doing that kind of stuff, and then Web 2 became very much more like managed and corporate. Now everything's got like a little bit of a LinkedIn vibe to it. It's a little disappointing.
Mm.
And so then the wild stuff, still crypto, and then people are still trying to like make crypto managed, which is actually a fantastic and completely unintentional yet fantastic segue into the next story here. Uh, uh, Kraken is introducing KBTC, an ERC20 token fully backed one-to-one by Bitcoin, held secure by Kraken, and always verifiable on chain. And so basically, yeah, there's a new Bitcoin token on EVML layers like Ethereum and I think Optimism is the other one. They're coming to other ones, and it's verifiable one to one, all that kind of stuff, but custodial, fully custodial. And I made a comment about this, basically saying this at the end of the day is how small block Bitcoin scales through custodians issuing Bitcoin backed tokens on superior blockchains. It may not be what the Maximalists promised, but it's what they
Yeah,
gave you. So that might be a spicy
yeah.
take on my end, but I'd be more than happy to hear what you say.
Well, I think you need to have those spicy takes because there's so much ignorance, and this is
Mm-hmm.
finally the rooster's coming home to roost, right? And people are going to start to see this, and they're going to have to
Mm-hmm.
eat their words. Let's say, I think, because
Yeah.
it just is what Bitcoin is. It cannot work in our view, and we've been saying this for years. It cannot work without a layer two of some sort,
Mm-hmm.
making it like it's an elitist coin because of the fees. It caters to the elite because they're the only people that can afford the fees. You have to have, in our opinion, zero fee transactions on Bitcoin, but only able to be done by a layer two that provides zero fees.
Mm-hmm.
That allows the masses to get access to it. It allows the normal people to be able to use it. Until that time, you're just going to be an elitist coin for the elite by the elite, basically. It didn't start off that way, but that's what it's become. And that all of a sudden, at the same time as that, you see the media start talking about it positively because they like it now because it's for
Mm-hmm.
them. And it's like someone's got to build layer two. So I give Kraken a lot of props for doing that. Although it's centralized under a company, um, we'll have a similar wrapping mechanism in the next 2 or 3 months on Hive and VSC layer two smart contract system on Hive, where you can wrap Bitcoin and then transact it for free, but it's wrapped into a decentralized smart contract. So there is
Yeah.
no central entity behind it. There's no ICO or pre-mine or company behind it, and the wrapping's held in a multi-sig that's supported by a smart contract system. So That's the way it should be done, and there's zero fees on that. So now you'll be able to move Bitcoin with zero fees. And we need that because we need to have, talking about looking at things pessimistically. If Hive were ever delisted from certain exchanges, it would not be good for Hive. So we need to have a Hive to Bitcoin or a HBD stablecoin to Bitcoin liquidity pool that's run by a smart contract. So we don't need to depend upon any centralized exchanges.
Yeah. Well, that's
So
good
that's where this came from.
about Leodex right now. Is through Leodex you do kind of have that through the Maya protocol, but you can't rely on just one thing. You gotta have. There was a bug on the Maya protocol this week, I believe. It got halted temporarily and then got resumed a few hours later, and that's fine. But the point, which happens if you watch Thorchain, the Maya protocol, they've had a lot of these kinds of things because they're dealing with custody or decentralized shared custody, but still holding on to lots of money that goes in and out. And they're very quick to have, like, I think 2/3 of the nodes or something. Like, I think any node can signal to just stop the chain, and then 2/3 can override that and restart it. And so, but they're very quick to just hit the trigger to stop it if there's a bad exploit to then fix it and just make sure they're very careful. But
So
the
it's a
point is,
consensus hull then.
yeah.
Still.
So,
Yeah.
but
Okay.
while it's very valuable, if you're relying on your entire like net worth to go through something like this and it gets stopped because of a thing, that's still a big problem. And the good thing about having the Maya protocol in tandem with Thorchain is there have been quite a few times when one of them has had a break and the other one has been still up. However, I'm a very big fan of both protocols and how they manage things, and they're extremely valuable. But you can't just be like, oh yeah, that's all we need. It's like, no, you kind of got to have a bunch of bridges. You have to have a bunch of
Yeah.
dexes. You have
Yeah, for sure.
to have everything. And so
Yeah.
the thing about the Bitcoin thing that I think is funny, because I've been through the Bitcoin life cycle. I started talking about Bitcoin in 2012. I've been through the whole thing. I've seen every step of everything. I remember using Bitcoin before they came out with HD wallets that gave you a new address every time, and then just seen the introduction of replace by fee, and then SegWit, and then Lightning, and then all this stuff. I forget who a friend of mine mentioned. He says that like Bitcoin development hit a dead end this year, and it's a little of a dramatic. It's a little dramatic telling of reality, but it is sort of true in that the Lightning Network, after a bunch of like fee spikes hit it, and it just kind of broke a lot of infrastructure. It's still there, and people are still building on it, but it's the hope that it would be the Bitcoin scaling solution is just gone. Like people are using it. It might be receding in some way, some of the hype and the usage. I wouldn't really, I have to find like data, but then a lot of attention went over, oh, well, let's do Fediments and eCash and all this custodial nonsense, but like as complicated as Lightning, but then completely custodial as well. And then every time someone used a different blockchain, a shitcoin as it were, to improve Bitcoin's experience, where people are like, look, I want Bitcoin, I'll just swap to Litecoin to spend, or I'll use Bitcoin, but I'll wrap it on Ethereum or whatever. The community, the maximalist community, would just, no, that's not the way to do it. We'll do our L2s. And I think Bitcoin's L2 game has sort of had its shot and kind of miserably failed. And so now Bitcoin is still there. It's still valuable. It's more valuable than ever in terms of like what the market is ascribing to it. And people still want to do things on Bitcoin, but now the torch has been passed to other blockchain ecosystems where now you're like, oh, Kraken is going to wrap something on Optimism or whatever. And so instead of having a custodial wallet of Satoshi or whatever nonsense you got there, you got a semi-custodial, because the Bitcoin is custodial on Kraken, but the IOU for the Bitcoin, the token, is not. You can just use it and send it around, and you can do a bunch of cool things with it. You can run it through the zero knowledge privacy smart contract railgun and get like Zcash level privacy on your Bitcoin transaction. You can do all kinds of awesome things because it got developed on like the EVM ecosystem. And just as you're saying about wrapping it onto VSC and things like that, and having like in a trust minimized way, I think the L2 strategy for Bitcoin, I think there will be some like all the Bitcoin options were trash. I think that there will be some okay options, at least in the future. People will find trust minimized ways of getting Bitcoin
Right.
representative tokens that will be cheap and fast and easy to use.
Yeah. This is what's cool about VSC is that it's built on a zero fee decentralized blockchain. It's a layer two system. The smart contracts are not on layer one. We don't believe in putting smart contracts on layer one. We think it's
Hmm.
computation should be separate and compartmentalized. It shouldn't be forcing all the nodes to operate all the computation on layer one. And then if one smart contract does really well, the fees go up on the whole chain. Like what are you doing? Um, so I just think that VSC is going to be able to handle that type of stuff, and it's going to be really, really exciting to see what happens over the next few months with that coming out.
Yeah.
It's centralized. It's got no company behind it. There's no VC or ICO. It's all community funded, and it's going to have various different ways of wrapping different products, not just Bitcoin. The bridges are. This is the other thing I haven't seen in the crypto industry yet. The bridges are going to be over collateralized. So if you want
Yeah.
to put some Bitcoin on a node, you've got to have some collateral to twice the value of the Bitcoin you have on the node. So that if that Bitcoin goes missing, the node smart contract pays out the original depositor. So they have some guarantee that they're not going to get all their money taken away. Right. I don't understand why most bridges, I don't think bridges have any collateral on them in the crypto industry, as far as I know. But it should be a
Yeah.
normal thing where you're like, yeah, if I'm putting money on your bridge, have you guaranteed that you're going to pay me out twice as much as I lose if it gets hacked? Like that's a
Yeah.
bridge I want to put some Bitcoin on.
Yeah.
Right.
It's an extra cost of doing business, but maybe if people don't trust these bridges, it's a
Oh,
you need to pay that to get the customer in.
you've seen, well, I think we've seen so far that these bridges can't be trusted, and then not only that, but it kind of centralizes the systems as well. And it's all trust me, I'll clear to layer one eventually when we're ready.
Yeah, that's little strange. Um, so let's just hit on this Craig Wright thing real quick because I don't think there's much to say about it,
Oh God.
and then hit up a couple of the live chat questions from the Inleo Threadcast, and then wrap it up. Let me see, where are we? Yeah, so Craig Wright is suing Bitcoin, BTC core developers, and Square for 911 billion pounds on the grounds that the current version of Bitcoin is being misrepresented as Bitcoin. Wright alleges that updates like SegWit and others have fundamentally altered Bitcoin cores to the point where it's no longer Bitcoin as intended in the white paper. According to Wright, his project, Bitcoin SV, is the true Bitcoin because it more closely aligns the original vision laid out by Satoshi Nakamoto. All right, so your hot take real quick. What do you want to say?
I mean, in some ways, he's right. Right, the idea was for the nodes to grow over time.
Mm-hmm.
The node size, the block size, I should say, um, but not so much that it centralizes the chain, and not so little that it keeps the chain slow and centralizable and
Mm-hmm.
commandeerable by the authorities, like what's happened. So I wouldn't say Bitcoin is currently the only reason that Bitcoin's on the media is because, well, I should say the only reason that Bitcoin's covered in a positive light on the media is because it's not Bitcoin.
Yeah.
It's not what Bitcoin is supposed to be. It's been commandeered, and it's an elitist coin that. I mean, it's great for the elite to clear a neutral clearing layer that you can clear money to people you're at war with. That's great, but it's not for the everyday little guy like we thought it was going to be, and that's not the original version of the white paper. Um, although I don't, I didn't follow the block wars that well, so I'm not so well. I was involved in Bitcoin back in 2013 as well, a long time ago,
Mm-hmm.
but I wasn't paying attention during the block wars. But as far as I understand, isn't Bitcoin Cash, Satoshi Vision just is it centralized? Don't you have to be like friends with someone to run nodes and process transactions?
So
It's just like what are you doing?
yeah,
It's great. It's cheap. It works. It's fast. It's more closely aligned. It's got growing sizes of block sizes. But don't you have to like be friends with the dudes that run? Wasn't there like a guy that issued some code that
mm,
centralizes the flow of transactions because Bitcoin was hostile attacking BSV?
yeah.
Because that's
So
what any proof of work system's going to do. It's always going to
yeah, I
hostile
did
attack.
actually follow the system a little bit closer. Um,
Dan
Bitcoin,
would be better to talk about this. But
yeah, Bitcoin Cash. In my opinion, one of the things that they did that was a mistake, but it's also in line with their ethos of being the real Bitcoin, is they stayed on the same hashing algorithm, meaning that they could be 51% attacked to oblivion by a lone Bitcoin miner at this point, which I don't think is a good idea at all. And it's
No.
not from a security standpoint, but I guess it is if you're holding out that you're going to win and they're going to lose and all the miners will switch over to you and you'll be the real Bitcoin, which I just don't think is realistic, but I understand the standpoint. However, during the hash war with BSV, there was they implemented what are 10 block, as far as I remember, 10 block rolling checkpoints, which
Yeah.
means that the transactions are frozen and are locked in permanently every 10 blocks. So if you 51% attack the chain, you can only roll back up to 10 blocks before that's as far as you can go. And so
Yeah.
it ended up a lot of people, including people who were still in that community, say that was like kind of a big mistake to do. But as far as I know, it's still there. Now,
Yeah, it's still there, yeah.
other than that, Bitcoin Cash works pretty well, and the development and hash rate and stuff is pretty decentralized. Now, BSV is a different story, where first off, they have everything is patented by nChain in the ecosystem. There's basically one miner that has all the hash rate. A lot of, I believe it's been implemented code for reassigning transaction owner or coin ownership, where a majority of miners can basically confiscate funds from someone and reassign them to someone else. And so if you have one miner that's associated with Craig Wright and you can just steal your money, I'm not using that system. Like,
Right. It's an old boys club, and
yeah.
you're not in.
Yeah. And the thing is, like, people are free to use whatever blockchains they want. As far as I've known, Craig Wright existed. And I was the person in 2016, I believe, who broke the story for Cointelegraph about him coming out and saying he's Satoshi. So I have a little bit of a dubious connection to that thing. But as far as I'm aware,
You open the can of worms.
yeah,
You're the
well,
one.
for Cointelegraph, a bunch of publications reported on it. But
Sure.
what happened
Yours was
is,
the
yes,
best.
he, as far as I know, all he's really done is like fucking sue people. Like he's done nothing in those like 8 years other than like give some talks, block people on X, and sue people and largely lose. And as far as I know, with this latest lawsuit, he's representing himself, and so because all the lawyers he used got burned out on. So I don't know what his angle is this time. Maybe he's just a last ditch effort to stay relevant and delay the inevitable. But I and here's my perspective on him. Yes, sorry, go ahead.
In some ways, I don't like the way he does things. I don't like what he represents and the way he's behaved. It's not good for the industry, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
But good for him. He can do what he wants, right? So he's going to make people's lives hell whenever he can. But in this case, it's like the first time I've seen someone actually making a legit point. And it's like, yeah, Bitcoin isn't what Bitcoin was supposed to be. And maybe that'll, guys like you, we've talked about it for years now as well, but it never quite seems to land. There's always enough cognitive dissonance in the maxi community to just call you a shitcoiner, even though we meet every definition of Bitcoin's the same kind of definitions. There's no company or ICO behind the systems that we use in the same way as Bitcoin is. But ultimately, it doesn't meet the original vision, and someone needs to say it, right? So he's kind of saying it, and it's like, all right, well, if I choose to say it on podcasts, right, it doesn't land home. He's suing people, and it's landed, right? So maybe there's some method to his madness.
Yeah,
But then the problem I've got with all these crypto guys is then they offer up some centralized shit as the alternative solution. It's like you got everything right, you understood everything, but then you said, "Come use my coin," and then when we look into your coin, it's got like centralized mechanisms.
yeah, of course.
It's
Always
like
the spicy
I
people.
got decentralization, but then the solution I proposed was also centralized. It's just like, what are you doing?
And I have to say about like Satoshi's vision kind of thing, the Bitcoin that most resembles old school Bitcoin, as an old school Bitcoin user myself, is probably Bitcoin Cash. It just does a lot of the same things. Obviously, there have been some technological overhauls, but it does seem like the same basic thing. BSV, first off, is one of the cryptocurrency projects that has least focused on payments. And a peer-to-peer electronic cash system was in the white paper. And Satoshi's all about talking about sending money around. And no one in the BSV community focused on payments or anything. You couldn't do shit with it. But you could use it to like timestamp weather data and spam the blockchain with a bunch of stuff, and which is not Satoshi's vision at all. That's not what it was meant to do. So in the use case, it's completely opposite of Satoshi's vision. And then all the centralized intermediary talk in the white paper kind of went the opposite way, where now it's just like, no, everything's patented, and then, oh no, now you got to do, now like you can't use it this way, and everyone's like, follow the law, comply with the law, all this, like, which is a centralized third party, by the way, the court system is. Everything's about that. And I think it loses. I don't, as far as which is the original Bitcoin, BSV or BTC, obviously the answer is like neither. Which is more like it? Hard to answer, but I might side with BTC. Yeah. As horrible as that makes me feel. BTC. As much as I have this hijacking Bitcoin book behind me and everything, it's just that BSV's gotten so like not even money, even though just like timestamping stuff, and so many centralized permission elements. You can use the BTC chain on chain if you can afford it and get the right time in trust minimized ways. You can't really do that with BSV. So on that thing, I would, again, we're talking about who's the biggest loser here, and I would say BSV over BTC. It's not a good prize to be fighting over.
I mean, the other thing that I think that wasn't taken into account properly here is that the main chain, ultimately, it's what you might call a democratic vote in which node do you run, right? Whichever one's got the biggest hashing power wins. So in that particular area of proof of work, there is only going to be one chain, because it will destroy the other chains. It has to. And the community can decide which nodes they want to operate, whether they operate the nodes of one chain or the other. So if you want to argue which Bitcoin's a real Bitcoin in that sense, it's BTC. But I still don't think that many people have realized that it's not BTC yet. Maybe Craig Wright will push the point home. But the irony is that he's not producing another solution that works either. So it's funny to watch it happen, but maybe he'll actually drive the point home. This realization is starting to kick in. And then let's take this to the more important side of this conversation.
Mm-hmm.
The crypto community at the moment is a little bit of a joke. Like no one seems to understand what decentralization is. Every time you speak to someone about crypto outside of the crypto industry, it's, what you trading, what you pumping, are you making loads of money? I'm like, bro, I haven't been using crypto to make money for like 9 years. I use it. I build things on it. I build applications and practical applications and spending mechanisms and social media sites, but I haven't traded it for years. Why is that the only thing that people know about crypto? We got to trade it and pump it and make some money. Like it's embarrassing,
I think
and it's like at a certain point, like, I'm trying to bring credibility to the industry because we're building legitimate things. And I think, from some of the solutions that you've mentioned with Dash as well, you guys are trying to do the same thing. And it's like, at a certain point, we've got to get this. I don't know how we do it, by hook or by crook. Maybe it's Craig Wright. Good for him. We've got to drive the conversation home that these people do. The majority of crypto people do not understand what decentralization is, and then secondly, and most importantly, I think something I've come to realize is you need to have a set of principles. It doesn't matter how smart you are. It doesn't matter how Vitalik Buterin could calculate, complex algebra in his head in 5 seconds with no assistance from anyone, and he's super smart.
It doesn't matter.
It's
that he gets a girlfriend and then the price crashes.
Well, maybe that's it's a hostile attack. But the point is that if you don't have a set of principles, which I question his principles with the way that he's ended up skirting around some of the definitions of what's on Ethereum, and that's also centralized to some extent as well. It's certainly not a decentralized coin, and it's like, how badly can we fail and then cover it up and pretend it's nothing and just carry on going forward into this centralized system? Just pump my bags, baby. Keep pumping my bags. And it's like, please, like, we're not here to do this. We're here to build parallel economies that can't be shut down. That's what we're here to do.
Yes.
And if you pump in bags, it's got nothing to do with that, you know?
Well, that's exactly, in the quick little final thought on this before we switch to a couple comments. That's exactly true. The normies, as I've figured out, they aren't any dumber than me. They're just focused on the here and now. And I, as someone I'm not that smart about the here and now, to be honest. I enjoy their feedback because it tells me, it keeps me grounded about like things. So like what normies are telling me, the market signal is that it is really hard for just anyone to make money. And that's why that's crypto's killer app is now, is people just play the casino or buy and get rich or whatever, because
Yeah, that's what I think it is.
it's so hard for them to do that. Whereas 99.99% of everything they want to buy, they tap their card and it works. So they don't need censorship resistant money right now. And
Right
so
now,
those of us who are, pre-normal, as I mentioned, we're focused on stuff that's not, that
Pre-normal,
will
right.
come to the forefront later. But like the normies are just there. Like, for example, all the Bitcoin cult and stuff and like, I don't know if you've noticed, but like the Bitcoin cult has started buying into MicroStrategy stock significantly.
Yeah, well, so it's got left to pump, right? And what you're going to
Yeah,
get a pump on
exactly.
Bitcoin, what,
And
30,
so
40%?
yeah, and so like Bitcoin needs to hit $81,000 to surpass the previous purchasing power all-time high, because inflation's been so bad over the years since then. So it's still like everyone's in the red who has Bitcoin in terms of their purchasing power. So at some point it does. I don't know. I think it's going to do pretty well, but I don't think it's going to do well enough to where you can keep this like prosperity cult going, and then
Yeah,
people are going to start doing other stuff. But then eventually you're going to have like crackdowns on transactions. You're going to have social media censorship in ways that, like, I think Elon Musk is doing a fantastic job pushing to limits of what Web 2 can do. But even then, there's only so far you can go. And then there's going to be people who are like, oh, I don't have enough followers to get monetized. And then they're like, go to Leo and you could do it. And at some point, you're going to start to see that kind of flow through to where it needs to go.
Well, you mentioned crackdown on social media, and for Bitcoiners specifically, we very in the very near future, and it's hard to say when with coding, you just never know. But in the next couple of weeks, hopefully, fingers crossed, maybe a couple of months,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to be able to. You can already, but it's in testing phase. You can already sign a transaction with your Bitcoin account, and then it creates a Hive account with the hash of the signature in the header of the Hive account, which means it's proof that the same person owns both the Bitcoin account and the Hive account. And then they can log into a front end on Hive, which is a copy of XNC, because XNC is open source. And you can post to a community called the One Bitcoin Club based on how much Bitcoin you have in your wallet. So if you have one Bitcoin, you can post on the One Bitcoin feed. If you have half a Bitcoin, you can post on the half a Bitcoin feed, right? And this is uncensorable social media that goes on the blockchain. So you can't delete the account. You can't delete the posts that they make. You can't demonetize the posts either. Like, it's the text-based storage is stored on the Hive blockchain. The non-text-based storage, non-blockchain storable content is stored on the Speak network, which is a decentralized storage network. And it's just like, that's where we're going. And then you can tokenize it, right? We can drop a token to those people and have some kind of social. So that's coming very soon. And that type of social media is going to be a thing. I think there's going to be lots and lots of communities that start using that type of technology. And I just think it's so cool, because you're going to have these mini, like, self-governing communities that are based around a social site, and they can vote, they can distribute inflation to each other based on the content they produce. And we're going to start with Bitcoiners initially.
Yeah, absolutely.
I just think it's going to be such a cool area of human experience to go down as people realize, oh, I can't be censored here. Twitter,
great.
why don't I just take my followers from Twitter and bring them over to the sites that I actually own, instead of always using Twitter? And maybe eventually, when Elon Musk disappears and the next person comes in and starts banning everyone again,
Yeah.
right? It's just not decentralized social media.
Well, so I have a meeting in 10 minutes, so let's lightning round a couple of these comments real quick.
Yeah.
I highlighted one over here. Let me throw it up on the screen. Lee Mass, whatever, some freaking name, says, will 3Speak be integrating Dash in some capacity, or maybe Distrader as a cashback option when spending HBD? What an interesting
Well,
question.
you know the answer to this, Joel.
Yes, we've been talking about some stuff and working together on some stuff. And that's just all I'll say for the moment, I guess. Just, yeah, we're doing our best.
Yeah, I mean, we can't promise anything right now because it's just workload and resources and everything. But we are working on some form of, in the same way that I've just described for Bitcoin accounts, to allow a Dash account holder to associate their Dash account with a Hive account and then post on Hive front ends with that account with that based on a Dash balance and receive a token drop for their Dash balance on the Honeycomb side, which is another layer two smart contract system on Hive.
Nice.
And then hopefully be able to spend. We're not quite there yet, but we're slowly moving towards. And I'd like to think that we can get to a point where you can spend Dash and claim HBD
Mm-hmm.
as a discount for your spending. I don't know. Once the rubber hits the road and we actually get down to sort of building that and working out, I don't know how hard that's going to be to do, but I feel like it's
Yeah.
possible, and I think it could be very beneficial to both communities.
Yeah, I think it's possible. And like as always, there's like the technical side of figuring it out. And then there's also like the economic side of figuring it out where like
Sure.
everything makes sense for everyone and everyone's happy about it, right?
Yeah.
Is what these
Yeah.
partnerships are about. And yeah, so I have one more comment to highlight. If you have any comments you wanted to highlight specifically, just let me know and I'll go find those. But this one, kind of very similar because they're actual like questions about the stuff. Ahmada Manga or whatever. Again, these people, these weird names. Said, question: What are people from the Dash community that have joined Inleo so far, so we can welcome them? It's me and so I like to take this to just say, if you're watching this and you use Hive specifically Inleo, comment and use the Dash hashtag and just say, hey, I'm from the Dash community. Just make a thread somewhere. I just want to see because honestly, I don't know. To my knowledge, the people from the community are obviously myself and the Dash Pay account. I can't find his. I forget what his username is exactly. Herman's Crypto or Felix Herman. You've
Felix.
seen him. You've seen him around. He's got like a red logo that's like animated dude. It's a German fellow.
Yeah. Felix with a couple of X's on the end, I think it is.
Yes.
Yeah.
He's
That's how he goes by on Hive.
he's been in the Hive community since the Steam days, I believe, but he's also a
Yeah.
big
Yeah. He
Dash
has, yeah.
community guy who's been to our
Yeah.
stuff.
All right. Really? I didn't
So
know that.
he hasn't. Yeah, I met him in person at the Dash convention after a raucous Oktoberfest. Yeah, he was there for that. But he
He's a good lad.
he's kind of both communities, so he didn't come from the Dash
Right.
community.
I
But
didn't know that. That's interesting.
there's a couple others. I'm pretty sure I signed up a couple people who haven't gotten active yet, so I won't mention anyone who's not active yet. But I am going to do a big push at some point. I haven't done a push yet because I kind of like you can only get people's attention really like one time, and I don't. I'd rather wait for InLeo to put all their like snazzy bells on everything, so everything's just smooth and streamlined first. So then I do a big push to get people on board. But I do see a lot of people. Actually, I've seen a lot of people say, "Oh yeah, I was a Dash holder back in the day," or "I remember I have a Dash holder here," or whatever. I wouldn't say it's not like a Dash community member, so to speak, but let me check really quick. Cause, what's her face? Sunseeker was commenting on this. I've seen her around. That she used to have some because at one point there was a partnership with Dash and a mobile phone company in Venezuela called KRIP, KRIP, KRIP
Yeah.
Mobile. And those phones all came preloaded with a Dash wallet with some Dash on it. And so a lot of Venezuelans got that, and herself included. So there's pretty much every Venezuelan in crypto probably has used Dash at least, and or the vast majority. And it's kind of funny. I was actually looking at the Dash Wallet App Store statistics today, and the top two, I would say, or number two of the top three countries for wallet installs currently, 2 and 3 are the U.S. and Russia. And it's kind of interesting. I don't know why the Russian community got so strong in the Dash, but they did. And I asked them, and they don't know. But it's whatever. But there's more Venezuelan installs than both of those combined. And I think the reason for that is because of these Crypt mobile phones that got sold. That a lot of people bought their low cost, pretty easy, effective phones, and they just had Dash on them. So there you go.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you have any comment to highlight, or are we just going to wrap it up?
No, well, the only thing I would say is I think there's 59 comments, and I've gone through and voted as many as I can. So there are lots of very smart comments, but there are only 1 or 2 questions, actual direct questions. Mostly people, Taskmaster was commenting on my hairline and saying how it was close to his. Now Taskmaster's like bald as an egg, so
That's kind of funny.
must be getting on.
Well,
Um,
my grandfather's not bald yet, and he is 96, so
yeah,
probably I'm good to go. But
that's what I'm hoping as well. We'll see.
yeah,
But you know, it's bad news for Taskmaster because I'd just look better than him if I was bald anyway. So
yeah,
gotta watch out.
yeah. I mean, especially because you got like the open shirt, like hairy chest look, and all you have to do is just look like one of those like ancient barbarians with like no shirt on and a giant fur coat and like gold
Yeah,
things on the ring, the big bushy beard. And
that's
just
what
like
I do before bed. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, and you just do the little Buffalo Bill dance in front of the mirror, Yeah. All right.
Um,
So
the only
yeah.
the only other thing I'd want to say is just the projects that we're working on. We run 3Speak, which is a video app on Hive, and hopefully soon to integrate Dash. When we say soon, give it a couple of months, but we're getting there. I think there's a path forward. Um, and then Distriator is a discount system, so you spend crypto and you earn cash back by posting 2 photos. So that's blown up recently. It's really doing well, especially in places like Venezuela, Poland,
Hmm.
Nigeria, and Ghana. We're going to take it over to. I'm going to go to La BitConf in Argentina on November the 1st and 2nd, and then I'm going to go to Adopting Bitcoin on November the 15th and 16th to hopefully showcase these things in real businesses at work. We're going to do workshops for people, invite them, give them some free Hive and HBD, and let them actually buy coffees with this and claim discounts.
Yeah.
Then we have Speak Network, which is it's in the final phases of testnet. There's a couple of final tweaks we're making to the tokenomics, and Speak Network allows you to store to earn, so you can store other people's content and earn crypto for
Hmm.
doing that on your spare hard drives. So that's like for any content that you can't store on the chain, which is basically just for text. So everything else can be stored on the Speak Network, peer to peer. And then breakaway communities, which is what we mentioned about Bitcoiners being able to log into a Hive front end and post their based on their Bitcoin balance, and hopefully be able to do that for Dash as well sometime in the near future.
Hmm.
But breakaway communities are basically where anyone can spin up their own front end for free, so they can have their own social media platform fully Web3 enabled. So that's not quite finished yet, but it's very, very close to being finished. We've been working on it for about 2.5 years. So in the next couple of weeks, hopefully, we'll be putting the first versions out and having them fully usable, login, sign up, everything ready and good to go. So it's exciting times, and I think this is going to be it's all of the stuff that I've just mentioned is just new ways of using crypto where you're not pumping and dumping. We're not asking you to buy a token. We're asking you to
Hmm.
earn the token for using the technology, right? And that's the key. That's how you know it's not a scam, because if it's a scam, they'll always ask you at some point to buy my token. Whereas when you can earn the token, it's clearly not a scam because you can get part of the inflation and
Yeah.
get it for being useful and valuable on the network and actually using the technology. So that's
Absolutely.
the way we think.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of exciting things working. A lot of exciting things coming around. Um, I think the truth in the scam that is the pump and dump crypto, the silver lining of truth in that is that people they want to profit. They want to do well for what is happening. They want whatever thing to make their life better. And
Mm-hmm.
what we have to do in the decentralized world here is to make sure that even if we can't promise them riches, we do promise them benefits. Like they join an amazing community on Hive when they use this
Yeah.
stuff. They get sovereignty. They get new ways to earn. Like it's
Yeah.
like maybe not everyone's a content creator, but if a content creator can do premium content on InVideo or get upvotes or do whatever else, they're going to want to use it. Or if people are just commenting on threadcasts all day and like they're just a heavy threadcast user, let's just say, and then they just end
Right.
up with some money from that. They're like, oh, this is freaking great because I was going to just waste my time on a like TikTok and then have my data harvested and, sold to like,
Right. For
sketchy
free.
things. Yeah. And
You
now
get
I'm getting paid.
literally
Oh,
zero.
this is awesome. So make people's
Right.
lives better. Like work
Yeah.
for people. All right, time to wrap this thing up. Where are you most active in Hive as far as interfaces and such?
Or probably, well, my Hive username is Starkerz, Starkerz.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I'm kind of known as on Hive. But I run the Three Speak Witness. We've just dropped out of the top 20, so please go give us a vote because running video infrastructure is not cheap, and
Yeah,
we
I
could
can
do with
imagine.
those rewards. Um, and we also run the Speak Network account, the Distriator account, and we also have a book which would be really cool for you to take a look at.
Mm-hmm.
It's the Hive account at Network State, and
Mm.
we've done Dan and I, we can't really call it business partners because we don't have a business, but it's a business
Poverty
partnership.
partner. That's fine.
Yeah, poverty partner, right on
Yeah.
the blockchain, and we've been working together for about 7 years, 6 years now.
Mm-hmm.
And we did a book together. It's about 9.5 hours of us talking about what real decentralization actually is. We systematically broke down
Mm-hmm.
everything that we know, and because we were attacked on Steam and Hive, the
Yeah.
takeover, we've got a lot more knowledge than we really realized, and so we systematically went through the whole system and worked out what you need first, what you need second, what you need third, what all these things need to be in place so that you can eventually get to decentralized governance and digital rights for tokenized communities that can't, that can be self-regulated and regulated and owned by the community that runs them themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's an audio book. We've done a lot of discussion. We're looking for a writer to actually write it.
Mm,
But we think
interesting.
that's a very good crash course for most people to get into a decent amount of understanding what decentralization is in crypto, rather than just learning about pump and dumps.
Yes. All kinds of good stuff. All right.
Yeah.
Let's wrap this thing up. Thanks everyone for watching. Everyone upvote. Everyone's cool comments. Give me some monies. All that good stuff. Don't forget that taxation is theft. Your phone is spying on you. Fiat is a scam. So live on crypto before it's too late. All right. Bye-bye, guys. Enjoy the weekend.